In this video, I really want to talk about how discovering the Myers-Briggs type indicator changed my life. I am an INTJ type personality under this system, and I think for a lot of INTJs or people who relate to being an INTJ, I think they have a universal experience from at least what I have come across. Most INTJs discovering MBTI really accelerated their growth and really helped them understand a lot of things, and it was really beneficial tool to get them where they wanted to be or to get them on the path of what they wanted to be. So I've realized a lot of other types aren't as obsessed with it as me or my INTP friends, and so the purpose of me creating this sort of content is I really want to use my experience to help other people that might relate to it and hopefully inspire them in a way that helps them utilize information to understand themselves and to go out and live their best life possible. Hi, my name is Kiara. I am an Olympian and mindset coach trained in neuro-linguistic programming and high-performance hypnotherapy. I'm on a mission to help others live more purposeful and meaningful lives through self-determination. Now, I want to put in a disclaimer that I am not an expert on MBTI, and I actually haven't deep dived as much as you can on it. I got so much from it, understanding myself, relating to others who identified as an INTJ, but I'm not really well versed in the cognitive functions. I'm only just getting a grasp on them now. But for me, the purpose of this is to share my experience, and hopefully others relate to it and can learn from it and can benefit from it, not to teach you about MBTI. Okay, so if anything in my semantics or my language, or I don't quite get something right, I'm talking from my experience, how I experienced it, and the purpose is not to teach you about MBTI, and I apologize if I get anything wrong about it. Okay, good, got that out the way. So when I was younger, I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel like I understood people. I didn't feel like I understood myself in a way that made sense in the world. Like, I felt a little bit alienish. Like, I felt like what was the point? I don't know, what was the point? I just felt so different to other people, and a lot of the people I was experiencing and how they were operating in life didn't seem to gel or be how I wanted to do things or how I saw things, and I didn't get where my place was, like what I could do with it. I was only very young, right? So, you know, not in a way that like, what's the point of life? I don't want to be here. I was like, what's the point in life in general? Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, for anyone who cares, my conclusion at the moment is you can only be the best of who you are in any given moment, and you can only live until you die. And so that's how I feel and think at the moment. Like, I want to live until I die. I want to experience life in my terms and in a way that connects with others, in a way that I feel alive and energetic and accomplished, and I just want to live. I don't want to be crippled with anxiety or, you know, feeling overwhelmed or any of the other experiences that I had when I was younger. And so the point of life is to live it, I believe. Take that with a grain of salt, whatever you do you. I hope that helps anyone out there if you relate. So when I was about 19, I was introduced to MBTI by an INTP friend of mine. He made everyone at work do it. And I kind of read through it, and I was just like, yeah, you know, cool, that's good to kind of, I don't know, people to understand themselves or whatever. I don't know, I just kind of brushed it off. Then when I was about 24, I sort of got into it and did it again, and I was a little bit more like, actually I think this has some validity, but I don't believe in using, like, I hate tools that put people in boxes. I think they're tools to understand yourself, to understand what might be happening in yourself and your brain and blah, blah, blah. But I don't think it's a box that you should be, I'm this and I can't do anything else. I think you can learn the skills and the capabilities and the ways to do things differently that works best for you. And if something can help you operate more optimally by explaining things inherent within you, then absolutely that is the best thing you can find for yourself. And if that label helps you in that way, I think it should, but I don't think a lot of people utilize it in that way. They're kind of like, I have this and I am this, and then they're just like, and so you have to react to me differently because I'm like this. I don't know if that's appropriate. It's not what I think they're useful for. So when I was about 24, I kind of like got into it and I saw the validity in it, but I didn't like being put into a box. And so I took it a little bit more seriously, but I still wasn't sold on it. And then somehow when I was about 27, and I think what happened is in times of extreme overwhelm and when I was just trying to figure out myself and figure out life, that's when I would start Googling, like, how does an INTJ do this or handle this? Or it was usually emotional. Is an INTJ shit at handling their emotions? Is an INTJ this? How should an INTJ behave in this? And so it was more advice that I could use in a community that I felt like at least a lot more people kind of understood what I might be going through. Because in my experience throughout my life, if I ever tried to communicate with others how I felt or if I was really struggling, a lot of the time they brushed it off, like, oh, you know, you always figure it out, you always know what to do, you always blah blah blah. And that's not untrue, but it doesn't mean that I'm not struggling, and it doesn't mean at this moment I don't need help, or like, I don't know. I didn't know what I needed, and I mean, I don't know if I know now, but I have a much better estimate if I'm ever feeling those sort of things, and it's much more obvious to me why I'm experiencing those things, and it doesn't send me into an existential spiral, and I don't feel so lonely because I realize what I was probably expecting from people before didn't quite exist for me in the way that I wanted it or thought it. I don't know if that makes sense. I lost what I was talking about. Oh yeah, okay. So in the time around 27 when I went into it again, I was obviously going through some sort of crisis. I was like, you know what? A good way to test the validity of this for me would be, I had some wonderful friends at that time, and I was like, I think these people are my people. They do things for me that I need, and I love them dearly, and I wonder if the MBTI can predict who those people are and why they match me, or why I match them so well, or how they can make me feel like I'm not an alien. So I made sure that I didn't look it up, like I didn't look up who it was supposed to be or what they were supposed to be like, because I hadn't kind of investigated more to the INTJ, like not really about any other types or anything at that time. And I got my 4 closest friends to do the test. Actually there were a couple of more. And so 3 of them were INTPs, but I already kind of knew that because the guy who got me into the test was an INTP, and I could see INTP traits in other people. And then my other friends were ENFPs, ENTPs, or ENFJs. They are the complementary types to a INTJ. And I was like, how did it know that? And so then I started researching a little bit more about other types, mainly those types, so that I could understand them better, because I knew I loved those type of people. So I wanted to find out ways where I could relate to those sort of people better and strengthen those relationships and do my part in being a better friend, I guess, maybe. But it also started to give me an appreciation for other people, and realizing that other people, even though the types I didn't launch into, other people operate differently to me. And because I loved my complementary types so much, and they were actually so different to me, I was like, I'm shit at a lot of things too, which those people really helped me with, especially like an ENFP that's like just rainbows and stuff. I don't know if that's just too stereotypical, but that's what they feel like, a big Labrador in my life. I need that. I need those people to remind me to not be so serious. I don't know. And I love them so much. And so anyway, again, lost my train of thought. So understanding other people was like a side benefit of this MBTI, which calmed down a lot of things about me. Like I was frustrated all the time because I was like, why are you doing it that way? What are you talking about? Like, why? Like, why would... I wasn't using a perspective. I'm really good at jumping into other people's perspective now, but I didn't consider it a thing before. I was just like, if I can do it, you can do it. Like, fuck me. Like, just work it out. I don't know how to explain it. Just work it out. And that's an awful way to approach things. It's an awful way to treat people. And so this sort of stuff changed me in a really good way to, no wonder I was isolated. Like I was stubborn, and I was like really bull out of the gate. And I don't think I was a bad person, but I wasn't very compassionate. And I think I was sort of scared of being vulnerable with that side of me. Don't judging others like that. Like I'm so glad that I don't do that anymore. And I can respect and love the parts of people that I love, and the other parts of them I don't. Like, I just don't have to engage with in that sense. Like, I can just let them be them, and I can appreciate me. So then what happened after I discovered that my friends were what they were sort of supposed to be under the MBTI system, I got a little bit, like, I wanted everyone in my life to take the test, and I was getting like weird about it. I was like, oh, everyone has to, and I started accidentally using it to be, you have to take this test so I can know if I should bother becoming friends with you. And like, anyway, to my credit, I realized that was super unhealthy. So I didn't let myself dive too much into it at that time, because I can't do this. I'm filtering people out based on this, like, I hate boxes. I hate doing that. And I don't want to have this hyper awareness that's like filtering people out, taking away that reason why I liked it so much, because it allowed me to connect with other people more. But I was like, oh, but I like connecting with these people better, so why don't I just do that? So that's why I didn't dive into the cognitive function. So I'm getting much better grasp of it now, because I've recently sat with a practitioner and done the test. But that's why I didn't deep dive into that earlier on in my life. And so what I think happened with me that was really, really healthy is that I found sport. I grew up in a really small country town, and we were always outside doing things like that. And I was quite sporty as a kid. It's just sort of what we did. And my dad was really interested in sport, so that's how we connected, going and doing active things together. So I was very lucky that I had a lot of that influence in my life. When I went to university, I wanted to make more friends, and I wanted to keep fit. I knew that it was good for me, and so I was like, I'll go do a sport. So I went and found an athletics club because I didn't want to do a team sport. And then the sequence of events that led after that completely changed me and forced me to grow in a way that I don't think I would have otherwise. It gave me so many skills that I realize now are probably more sensor type, and kind of got me grounded in the real world and gave me a lot of skills to do that. I also have a lot of skills in specific planning and things like that I developed at a young age, because I had to leave my parents in the country and go off to school and really organize my own life from a very young age, and I was responsible for other people. So my circumstances, I think, gave me very strong skills to ground myself back in reality instead of just thinking too far out in the future and not doing anything with that. So what happened when I was like full-blown sold on the being an INTJ, and that made most sense to me, I then became relentless at improving my weaknesses, and I mean utilizing my strengths a bit more. But it probably wasn't a bit till later till I really valued and appreciated my strengths in a real way that like made me proud of who I am. That was only actually like a couple of years ago in 2022. But I was like relentless. I would, you know, read through the common weaknesses, which I was doing a lot of them, like probably way more than I wanted to, or that I was happy with. And so arrogance is a big one. Like there's a difference between confidence and arrogance, and I was like towing the line. I was quite dismissive of other people's thoughts and opinions and things, because I had worked it out in this way that just made sense. Like, okay, we can go through what you're talking about, but this makes sense. But you know, I have actually been proven wrong in circumstances. Like I think my way still would make sense, or what I'm thinking would make sense, but there are other ways to come to the same point or same objective. They're just like maybe not ways that I would do it, or they're actually ways that I haven't come up with, and they're just as good. And so I'm still learning that, and the concept now that I'm really starting to embrace and love is the concept of who, not how. Find the who's in your life that support you and what you're doing and what brings out the best in you, and give them the trust to like help you operate in the best way that you can. You don't have to have everything in you. You don't have to have all the answers yourself. You don't have to understand everything yourself. You're actually just slowing yourself down by trying to learn things that other people already know, and then build on that. Just if something makes sense to you with the way that someone's explaining it, take it and use it and build on it. It's a way that just takes out so much stress, overwhelm by trying to understand things that you don't particularly love or care about in the way of their specifics, but you just need that information to build on. So I mean, that's probably a self-trust thing and a trust in other people, which I didn't really have solidly, I don't think. You know, like when I was younger, I think a lot of adults, you know, they express that they know better. Adults know more than you, or better than you, or understand things more than you. And for my experience, I don't think that was necessarily true. I think the way that I thought worked out things differently to them. And so being shut down a lot, like, oh, you can't know that, you can't understand that, like you haven't done it long enough, you blah, blah, blah. I repressed a big part of me, I think, at a young age. And then that became a trust issue with others and with myself. I've dealt with that now. And so the concept of who, not how, is like finding your who's to get you where you need to go, and you don't have to understand to the nth degree everything. As long as it gives you what it needs to give you and you feel comfortable with that, then you can build on it. You don't have to go down to the detail yourself, because it's just gonna annoy you. And then it's not gonna help you make action anyway. More of my weaknesses was I was like emotionally not very good. I was almost scared of my emotions or letting people see them. I was like so awkward with my emotions all my life. Like I was really sensitive when I was a kid. I just like cry really easily. And then obviously at some point I learned to like repress that a little bit, or deal with it, or figure out a way to continue what I wanted to continue without worrying about the emotions. And so then it was, I don't know, it was just like a problem with vulnerability that I had. And like vulnerability is really important, but you shouldn't be vulnerable with everyone. Like I think there's a thing out there at the moment that you should be vulnerable just to be, you know, connected and stuff. But it is important to be vulnerable with the right people, because there's some assholes who just take advantage of it. Like not everyone has the best intentions, and not everyone is aware enough to know that they're sort of shitting on your vulnerability. So you shouldn't just be vulnerable with everyone. So I don't think it's a bad thing to be selective of who you're vulnerable with. And I used to be like really defensive of what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it, because I was like, I know that I'm a good person. I'm not saying or doing this or whatever because I'm mean or awful. It's going to work out the best way if we do it. And then I'll try and justify it. And I was really bad at articulating myself. And I was also trying to control other people, which is a silly thing to do. You can't do that. You need to control yourself, and you can have your boundaries or whatever, but that's not about controlling other people. People are not going to behave the way that you want them to behave. And so that's a silly thing to try and do. But I was like, I have thought through this. You don't have to question it. Like I didn't just say it randomly. But now I realize that some people have to talk out loud like that and randomly say things and it doesn't mean anything. Whereas I'm like, if I've said it, I've thought about it. You don't have to question if I've thought about it or not. Like that used to infuriate me. What do you mean? Like what do you mean? And then I also had a lot of social anxiety. I didn't know how to socialize. I didn't feel comfortable doing it because I just probably wasn't comfortable with myself in an external environment, I guess. And so I had a lot of overthinking and a lot of anxiety in that sort of sense. And so, yeah, that wasn't great. So it was only in mid-2022 that I kind of discovered the tools which would actually resolve a lot of the problems that I had from sort of repressing my personality. And so what I learned is that when you're acting, so you have a preference, right? You have a preference of introversion over extroversion. You have a preference of intuition over sensing. You have a preference of thinking over feeling. You have a preference of judging or perceiving. And so it's not that you can't do the other type. It's just clumsy and awkward and doesn't make you feel that good. And so it's like if you write a signature with your dominant hand and then try and do it with your non-dominant hand, you can get way better at your dominant hand if you want to. But if you're forced to do it in situations where you're under pressure or you don't want to do it, you're gonna feel awkward and you're gonna feel a bit shit. Like you're like, that's pretty crap. So if you're operating out of preference too much, it's gonna start to make you feel awful and deregulate you to an extent. And so I've recently learned all of this stuff about regulation and how important it is and how brains work to store information in your map of the world in ways that deregulate you. And so it's completely changed my life. If you haven't heard of it, it's neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy. I discovered this course by wanting to do coaching. Like I hate the word life coaching because that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I didn't want to just be like, this is how you live life to people. But I did realize that I had a lot of skills and ways of thinking that not everyone has. And so I wanted to be able to effectively help other people get the things that supposedly came easy to me. People always say, oh, you're so lucky. Things come, like, you know, you get all these things come to you. I was like, oh, hang on. Well, I've worked very hard to get these things. They don't just come at me. Like there was a way that I got there, and that's actually a process that you can probably follow. Anyway, and so like probably resonated with me better was a mindset coach. And so I started looking up mindset and business coaches and things like that. And I was like, that sounds a little bit more like something I'd want to do. And I was ringing them, like a bunch of coaches, to see, just have a talk about what they got into it, if they enjoy it, what they get out of it, blah, blah, blah. I rang one and he spoke with such conviction. He was a sports person too. And so that was obviously a rapport building thing. And he told me about NLP and he told me that there was hypnosis in there too. And just the way that he expressed it was like, this is like, it's a game changer. Like you don't understand how effective this stuff is. And he goes, I'm not, like he wasn't trying to sell me it or anything. He goes, this is what's worked for me. This is where I trained. Anyway, and so I didn't even really go into that much research, which was really quite unusual for me at the time. And the conviction that this guy had in his voice and, you know, whatever it was, I was just like, okay, I'll do that course. So sometime in the future, after the next sort of Olympics, I wanted to utilize that, you know, the background that I have and the success that I've had in sport. I want to utilize that to help people. And unfortunately, unless you have proof for people, which is, I mean, it's fair. Like I'm not going to listen to people without too much, you know, proof or evidence or whatever, or contrary evidence. You have more say, you have more sway with people when you have, you know, a background. So my background in sport, I can leverage as a mindset coach, obviously. Like that's the easiest way to do that. So I was more looking for the future, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do this course now. Sounds like something that would be really interesting to me anyway and probably helpful for me. But I just didn't understand what I was going into and what I was going to learn. And it's not even learning, it's actual ways that change the wiring in your brain to see, to experience your looping problems differently so that they're resolved. So your brain can look at situations as the adult you are now and not keep looping this same problem that like you've worked out. Like I used to be so intellectual about things. I'd learn more and more and more information, and I didn't know how to get that information to deal with my problems properly. So I had really high functioning anxiety, like massive perfectionistic trait. I would be like overly self-critical. I didn't realize at the time because I felt like I had a lot of confidence in myself, even though I didn't really connect with the world in a way that I wanted to, but I didn't have a true inner self-confidence like I do now. And NLP absolutely blew that away for me. And one of the processes that I did on the course that one of the wonderful teachers, practitioners ran on me, like changed my life, absolutely changed my life. And now I have those skills to change other people's lives. And what I want for everyone else is to be able to have those tools. And a lot of it sounds woo-woo, and it's not taught in the system that we can resolve our issues. It's not taught that we can overcome things and just move out and be our best selves. It's all about how to be really disciplined and how to be really in control of your mind and all of this sort of stuff. The premise of NLP is that the language that we use to make meaning out of life creates a map of the world and a representation within our nervous system that we use to operate in the world. And sometimes that language that we've used to label something or to explain something or make meaning out of it at some stage in our life has become problematic. That's why we end up with limiting beliefs that we're operating off subconsciously. 95% of us are subconscious, and we're trying to figure out everything consciously. And so what tools in hypnotherapy and NLP do is allow the flight or fight amygdala to soothe, and then you can work better with the subconscious and find out what's actually looping in your nervous system, what's actually causing you a problem, and just sort of go back and allow your brain to use that information differently. I've just gone on a completely side rant, I'm so sorry, but what I want is I want to reach as many people as possible so they don't have to experience things that I experienced that I just couldn't work out. Like I couldn't apply to myself, and I couldn't feel safe and secure and regulated within myself sort of consistently. And I think a lot of that came from an INTJ. So what I want is to be able to help INTJs particularly, but obviously anyone, overcome their issues. These videos that I'm doing on YouTube, the plan is to create a community and a platform where I can share what I know, share what works. I want to create online courses, which I'm starting to do in a free community. Hopefully scale in a course system the NLP, but it's much harder to do NLP stuff to a general group than one-on-one, because everyone subconsciously stores things differently. So if you're not getting direct feedback about what's coming up, it's hard to challenge the language that you're using and all of this sort of stuff. But there are ways to do it, and what I'm creating, I hope, will help people. That's what I want. And so at the moment with my channel, I am trying to grow it. I'm trying to get better at speaking on camera, and I just did a random video about being an INTJ because I wasn't prepared that day, and it's got thousands and thousands of views on my tiny channel that has, like 100 subscribers or something like that. So they reckon you leverage what works, and so double down on what works. And I want to make more content for INTJs, but I want to make clear that I am not an expert in MBTI. I just want to help people like me 5 or 10 years ago. If I can help them get to the place that I am, where I'm just loving, like I love my life so much. I love who I am so much. I love the people in my life so much. And I'm not saying I've got it all worked out, but I feel like the first time in my life in the last year that I'm experiencing life and I'm living it. Perhaps before I didn't understand how to be satisfied exactly, and I had to heal parts of me that I had worked out. A lot came from being an INTJ, but I didn't have the tools to undo those stories. So from the time that you were born to the time that your brain and your nervous system stored that information or that response to the external environment, that's what you had at the time to deal with that. And so your subconscious has a positive intention for you. And whether it's appropriate or not, or whether it works well or not, the intention behind that behavior or response is positive. And then what happens is you just move on from that time. It's usually stored when you're in a problematic flight or fight response. And then you keep subconsciously reacting off that, whether it's a limiting belief, whether it's just an anxiety stored feelings, like these flags trigger that, whether it's boundaries or anything like that. Those are all subconscious reactions that your behavior reflects without your consciously trying to do that. That's why you end up patterning things that are problematic for you, and then when you're triggered into them, it's really hard to work them out or stop them or undo them yourself. But there are genuinely ways to resolve your issues by making sure that the information that you've learned as the adult you are now is being applied subconsciously to your map of the world. And it's mind-blowing how effective and how actual simple it is. Simple but not easy, and you have to be brave enough to deal with your shit, really. It's so not, like, I didn't realize how high functioning my anxiety was, or that I didn't identify it as anxiety. I was just like, I am an overthinker, and that's just who I am. I have to manage that. But like, I don't do it anymore. Like, I just, such a peaceful place. And you need to be able to respond rather than react to the world. Like, responding appropriately to any given situation, I believe, is the most optimal version of yourself, rather than be triggered into a reaction that you can't. It's not about control, it's about being resolved enough to be able to meet each moment as it needs to be met. So it doesn't mean that you don't deregulate, but you can regulate. You can just be regulated very quickly after it and move on, and not take things personally. And yeah, I'm going to stop ranting about that now. But that's how I became the best version of myself, and that's what I'm building to help other people with. I want to help a younger version of me 5 or 10 years ago, and that's an INTJ that's really battling to understand the world and themselves and feel like they fit, or that they trust themselves, or they trust other people, or they might be having an existential crisis and like, what the hell is the point of life? I want to help those people. That's why I'm targeting INTJs, even though I think a lot of people will benefit from the skills that I have and the capabilities that I have now. This is where I'm going first. So if you've made it to the end of this video, I'm sorry that we diverted. I just freeballed this video. So yeah, if you got to this point, I hope you enjoyed the little rant. I hope if you're an INTJ, you can get to a genuine point where you appreciate who you are and how you operate and how special it is, because I think that's important, but it's also important to know that other people are special too. And it's not that I never used to think that other people were special too, but I didn't understand them. And it's impossible to expect others to love you and embrace you fully for who you are if you can't do the same for them. And so understanding how other people operate, I think, is just as important as understanding yourself, and appreciating that we're all different. We all use and utilize information differently, and we all have different strengths and different weaknesses. Deal with what you need to deal with. Identify the things in yourself that are things that you want to change, and find the way to change them. I couldn't find that until I found NLP, and so I want to give you that option to go and look it up, and ask me any questions you want. I'll make more videos on it, or you can join my free community. But find your own way, whatever works, to resolve the problems you have. Don't just keep thinking about them. Don't keep gaining information to explain them. Learn how to fix them. I hope you like this video. Feel free to pop any questions down below that you have. I know that was a huge segue. Hopefully it helped you understand something or relate to something, and I will see you in the next video.